Crafting an Accessible Design System, presented by Josh Goldberg. Ali Bites 2021.
Hi, I'm Josh Goldberg, and this is Crafting an Accessible Design System. Everything that is in this presentation is also on my website at joshuakgoldberg.com, including detailed slide notes and for the images, alt text, and attributions. The agenda is first we'll talk about what a design system is, why you might want to use it, how it helps with accessibility. Once you've decided to have a design system, how you can knowledge share about it amongst your team members. And lastly, now that your design system is awesome and beautiful, how do you make sure it stays that way? What is the design system? Let's dig in. How does it fit into accessibility? At its core, a design system is a set of shared visuals and/or components used across at least one application. At the lowest level, what I often refer to as ATOM, per the common atomic design phrase in the industry, you might have things like colors, spacings, animation constants, perhaps some typography. Bigger versions might be components like buttons, texts, or forms, perhaps even groups of components. Taking a look at a quick example on Codecademy.com, you might see the learner dashboard. The first part of the design system might be the colors. The 6 most common ones are on the bottom right: white, gray, black, beige, yellow, hyper. Those are repeated across the website and thus are definitely part of the design system. You might also see the typography, for example, the menu text versus the body text. The buttons are a hugely repeated thing. A little iconography and logos that are used often or repeatedly. Some more fancy or less common things like the progress bar or the hex character. These are all the low levels, the smaller components in the design system, but they might extend up to bigger things like a global header or a list section that gets repeated. Anyway, the reason why we do all this is because designers and developers, everyone does not want to be told to do something over and over again. If you've already built a button and gotten it right and made sure it's perfect for accessibility, why would you recreate that and do it over again? It's a lot of work. No one wants to do that. So we build this design system as the canonical set of ways. This is the color spectrum. These are the buttons so that we don't have to do them over and over and over again. And that's great. That really is. So if you have things that you've gotten right for accessibility, things like color contrast ratios, the right sizing and spacing for text, focus states, which are always hard, buttons, which are also always hard, little things like live narration, ARIA live equals polite, that type of stuff. Put them in a shared location so other people can use it and slap the name design system onto it. It'll save you a ton of time. Highly recommend. Now that you have this design system slapped onto your collection of components and shared items, how do you make sure that people on your team are using the design system? First up, documentation. Very, very useful. Write usage docs, pages describing your system, and keep them updated. Random questions can form a library, so highly recommend making an FAQ section. Where are the components? How do you use them? When can you customize them? How do you develop against them? What about bugs? What about this random accessibility edge case? Highly recommend make a set of docs and keep them updated. They'll save you a lot of time answering questions and make people more likely to find the answers. Personally, I really like Storybook as a tool for those docs. It's a pretty awesome thing, very smart, that creates interactive document pages from your components. It allows you to write them in a few formats, one of which is MBX, a really cool combination of Markdown and React. Furthermore, it integrates well with things like TypeScript that we'll look at later, which help make your interactive document pages fun and good. Taking another quick example, Gamut is the Codecademy design system's name, gamut.codecademy.com. And you can see our organization, again, per that atomic design thing, atoms, layouts, molecules, etc. Each of these components or pieces of the design system have their own page. So the button page will show you the links to the Figma source file, how it looks, example usage with code, all the different React props it can take in. Storybook is pretty sweet. You can get a lot of good stuff on there. And this is really nice for you because you want people to see a rich documentation page so that if they want to use your components, they can figure out how to get the darn things working. Once you have those documentation pages, storybooks, whatever set up, Give some talks about them. Present. Take your team en masse and explain to them, this is how you use the things. This is how you're going to use them from now on. They're really good for getting people to know your stuff and providing a space for answering questions, in addition to just general excitement, getting people pumped about things, which you definitely want to do. On top of those presentations, I recommend pairings. Presentations are good at disseminating top-level, broad knowledge, but the real deep stuff, the real collaboration, comes from one-on-one or small group pairings, where if you see that someone is, say, re-implementing a page or adding a new feature to something, work with them. Get some time where you can collaborate and show them the design system. The flip side is, if you develop in isolation, if you never pair or present to people, the knowledge of the stuff will be isolated, so no one will use it, which defeats the purpose of making a shared set of components and visuals and atoms and whatnot. So pair, present, do. Lastly, you've made the thing, people know about it. How do you keep it good? Quality enforcement. First off, my favorite thing in the world, TypeScript. In this context, it's really nice because it restricts people to doing only what's accessible and known to be good. Let's take an example. Suppose you're making a submit button component and removing all the fancy things that might come with it, like on click or different color areas. Let's just say there's a background color that comes in as a prop. This component doesn't tell people which props are fine, what's known to be accessible, how does it align to the design system. So you can pass in whatever you want, and we have no idea just looking at this slide. Is dark blue okay? Light blue? What do we do? Enter TypeScript. TypeScript allows you to declare in the syntax what is allowed for, let's say, a function prop, a parameter. Here we say explicitly that color is only allowed to be dark blue or black. So when someone uses submit, no problems if it's a dark blue color, but if they use something that we haven't explicitly said is okay, which hopefully means we know to be accessible, then it gives a complaint. In this case, TypeScript will yell at us and say color is only allowed to be dark blue or black, not light blue. So yay, that's good. TypeScript helps us stay accessible. I also highly recommend Axe, or some equivalent of a tool that looks at your HTML and CSS and tells you where all the accessibility issues it can find are. I also definitely really recommend put Axe into your CI/CD or build pipelines, so that if someone pushes code or tries to push code with an accessibility issue detected by Axe, big, you're not allowed to push that to production. So we should note, Axe in common internet usage and anecdotally for me really only catches up to a little less than a third of accessibility issues, which isn't everything, you need more, but that's still a pretty good amount. So two common ways to integrate Axe. One is at the unit or low level, where you might render a single component and then check that component for Axe issues. Another would be end-to-end testing, where let's say you load an entire page, for example, in this write code snippet, the dashboard. And then you try to visit the dashboard and check its accessibility after injecting the Axe runtime into the page, which I think is just the coolest thing ever. There's also a good integration with Storybook, so that if you want to let people run a little accessibility test on their docs pages, you can do that. It's pretty useful. Would recommend. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, if you're building anything that should be accessible, especially a design system, get feedback from real users. Unless you know accessibility, unless you know how to use, let's say, a website without a mouse, just with a keyboard, it's really hard to make it good. It's really hard to get it right. So talk to people who are, say, accessibility experts or who themselves use things in formats other than you. We regularly run audits on our website and our design system because that's the only way we've really been able to make sure at Codecademy that our stuff actually is accessible. Get the experts. So to recap, a design system is really nice because it allows you to reuse code, especially in the context of accessibility, where it's important to get things right. Knowledge sharing helps make sure that people on your team know about the thing and how to use it properly. And quality enforcement makes sure that you built the thing right and it stays right. Again, my name is Josh Goldberg. Everything here is on my website at joshuakgoldberg.com. And I really appreciate you and the conference organizers for listening to me. Thanks. Bye.
Ali Bytes 2021.